We're just a few days into the federal trial of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs, a spectacular fall from grace for the one-time richest rapper in the world. He's facing charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution, in addition to emotional and sometimes graphic testimony. The judge, jury, Combs' supporters in the gallery, and members of the media are seeing physical evidence of Combs' alleged criminal enterprise. I'm combing through the surveillance video that has been pivotal to this entire saga and discussing new details about Combs' finances and travel with celebrity criminal defense attorney Bradford Cohen. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. In November 2023, Cassandra Ventura, better known as Cassie, filed an explosive lawsuit against her ex-boyfriend, Sean Diddy Combs. She had been in a relationship with Combs for a decade. She made bombshell accusations against Combs, alleging that he not only beat and verbally abused her, but also forced her to participate in group sex performances, sometimes called freak-offs. While he has admitted no wrongdoing, Combs settled the lawsuit the very next day. Since then, we've seen raids by Homeland Security agents at Combs' homes on both coasts, the leak of surveillance video that strongly backed up Cassie's claims, a federal indictment, and Combs' arrest. And that really wasn't that long ago. Combs has been locked up in New York since his arrest in September, and it seems that he wanted to get to trial as quickly as possible, and here we are with a trial underway at the federal courthouse. After opening statements, the government introduced the now infamous surveillance video. It shows Combs running down a hotel hallway in nothing but a white towel, chasing after Cassie and eventually assaulting her. The prosecution alleges that she was trying to escape from one of these freak-offs, and allegedly this happened at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles in 2016. Someone leaked that video to CNN, and it was seen by millions of people. Prosecutors alleged in his indictment that Combs tried to bribe the security guard who responded to a disturbance on the 6th floor. Cassie says what you're watching in that video is her trying to escape one of those freak-offs and being punished by Combs for it, and she says that he intended to drag her back into the hotel room. Combs' defense has maintained that while this was incredibly disturbing to watch and it is unacceptable evidence of a domestic violence episode, it is not evidence of sex trafficking. Here at Law&Crime, we got our hands on the video files that were shown to the jury, which includes the surveillance video CNN received and later handed over to the government, and a video that the security guard recorded later on his cell phone to show his wife. This incident happened just after 11 a.m. on March 5th, 2016, and I want to take you through it. Now, I will tell you, we have chosen to freeze the video at the most violent parts. So at the beginning of the video, you can see a woman, later identified as Cassie, leaving a hotel room at the end of a hotel hallway. She's wearing jeans and a black hoodie, and she's barefoot. She comes around the corner to the empty area by the elevators. She presses the call button and puts on her shoes. At the same time, Combs has come out of the hotel room and is running down the hallway wearing nothing but a white towel and striped socks. He comes around the corner and grabs Cassie by the hood, slamming her to the ground. While she's down, he smacks her again. He walks over and picks up her small travel bag and purse. As he walks by, he kicks her. The video then shows Combs starting to drag her. At one point, Cassie can be seen cowering near the door to the lobby area. She gets up and picks up a couple of things that have fallen out of her bag, then goes over to the courtesy phone on the wall. Combs is headed back to the hotel room when he realizes Cassie isn't behind him. She's picked up the phone, and when he comes back around the corner, obviously upset, there's a terrifying moment when he advances on her, backing her into a small seating area. He then sits in one of the chairs out of the frame of the security camera, but you can still see him in a large mirror on the other wall. Combs is agitated. He picks up what appears to be a vase, and he throws it in Cassie's direction. Before we get back to this story, I want to turn to a Law&Crime legal alert. If you received a Depo-Provera birth control shot and were later diagnosed with either a brain or a spinal tumor called meningioma, you may be eligible for a lawsuit. Morgan & Morgan is investigating claims that patients were not properly warned about this risk. It's free to check, takes just a few minutes, and you don't pay unless you win. So scan the QR code on your screen. You can also click the link in the description box of this video or go to forthepeople.com/LCDEPO to see if you qualify. Photos entered into the court record show broken pieces of it scattered around the elevator area. Cassie picks up the courtesy phone again and appears to be crying. When Combs advances on her again, she holds up her hand to shield herself. The security guard, who later took video of the surveillance on his cell phone, is seen getting off of the elevator. His name is Israel Flores. He was called as the prosecution's very first witness this week. An email that he sent to upper management explaining what happened was also entered into the record. Flores explains in the email that there was a distress call on the 6th floor and he saw a man walking back and forth in front of the security camera in a towel, so he went to check it out. He reported that Combs told him Cassie's name was Cece. This is what the email says, quote, "I saw the damage that had been done and I began to diffuse the situation by advising Mr. Combs to understand his status and the safety and concerns for our guest. He began yelling at Miss Cece and I advised both of them to separate from each other, that it wasn't convenient for both of them to continue like this, especially in the hallway and in a towel." In the video, the guard speaks calmly with Combs, who is still sitting down. At one point, Flores is laughing and smiling as they chat. He and Combs then walk back toward the hotel room. Cassie has walked out of range of this camera down the hallway the other way. Flores and Combs talked in the hall for a minute before Combs apparently noticed that Cassie was down the hall and reportedly raised his voice. Flores says he told Combs that he had to quiet down because of other guests. Cassie follows them into the hotel room and comes out less than a minute later with her bags. She left and no one tried to stop her. A minute after that, the security guard leaves. Then Combs walks out, still in the towel, and walks around talking on the phone before the video ends. According to Flores' email to management and his testimony on the stand, he saw Cassie in the lobby and told her that he didn't want Combs to see her. He took her to the valet area and went to get the manager on duty, referred to as an MOD. But when they went back to the valet area, Cassie was gone. The manager and Flores then went back up to Combs' room to let him know the charges for the damage would be charged to his room. Then this happened according to the email. When Mr. Combs came out, he was about to start yelling, still in his towel, but MOD a day, and I stopped him before he did and advised him that we were not there to make it bigger than it already was. He saw MOD a day holding his phone and automatically assumed he was being recorded. So he grabbed his hand and told him to back off. He was then told no one was recording him. When the man threatened to call LAPD if Combs didn't calm down, Combs reportedly said, quote, "It's just that I don't want to lose anything and I can lose it all." An interesting note from Flores' email that we noticed was that he said that there would be extra patrols at the hotel until Sean Diddy Combs checked out, meaning Diddy stayed at this hotel, continued to stay at the hotel even after this incident in the hallway caught on surveillance video with Cassie. But this isn't the only evidence entered into the record. Documentation shows a list of evidence collected in the months leading up to trial. For example, on the day of the Homeland Security raids, Combs was at the Miami Opa-locka airport getting ready to leave on a pre-planned trip. At that time, agents seized a cell phone from Combs' person, 2 cell phones from Christina Corum's person. Remember, she's considered Combs' right-hand woman, and she's even been compared to Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's infamous madam. 1 cell phone from Corum's suitcase, which was used by Combs. The government had experts comb through these electronics. Excerpts of those extractions are listed out by evidence number. When agents were searching Combs' home in Los Angeles and Miami, they found even more cell phones. In LA, 2 cell phones from desk drawers and offices, a cell phone from a bedside table in the master bedroom, and in Miami, 3 different cell phones stored inside black Balenciaga boots in the master bedroom and its closets. Then, when Combs was arrested at the Park Hyatt Hotel in New York City, more cell phones were seized from Combs and Corum. The documents also list extractions done on the phones of people connected to Combs. Another evidence list shows that financial records were requested from multiple financial institutions, including American Express, JP Morgan Chase, and Citibank, as well as PayPal, Venmo, and Zelle. The government exhibits also include lots of information about Combs' travel, with records from just about every airline you can think of: Alaska Airlines, JetBlue, Delta, Southwest, even Spirit. So how do these records help bolster the prosecution's case that Combs was part of a larger criminal enterprise? Join us now to talk more about these new pieces of evidence and what we've heard from what's happening in the courtroom thus far is criminal defense attorney Bradford Cohen. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being here. From the documents that have been released today, we have also the video. It seems like a longer video of that incident that happened in the hotel in California. What could prosecutors be trying to prove by releasing these new pieces of evidence?
So, when we say new, it's probably new in terms of introducing them, but the
Sure.
defense already knows about them. I don't think this is something that's like a bombshell or a smoking gun. What happens generally with these cases, if you see any of these sex trafficking cases or RICO cases, it's very dependent on the paperwork to kind of put everything together in context. So, the Zelle payments, the bank payments, the financials, they want to show that money was flowing from Sean Combs's accounts or accounts that he ran into either some sort of prostitution ring or a prostitute themselves, or to Cassie, and then Cassie would then pay for either flights, hotels, or them the prostitutes personally. So she was kind of the go between, allegedly, between the prostitutes and Sean Combs. And they have to show this in order to say, hey, jury, she's not a co-defendant. She was someone who was getting these things from Sean Combs and then passing them on to the prostitutes. So you're looking at phone records, you're looking at flight records, you're looking at texts and financials and things of that nature that would bring it all together and kind of bolster the testimony of Cassie. Because if you look at her testimony, people are going to be like, hey, you were with him for 7 years. You knew what was going on. You kind of were involved in all this. You were paying these prostitutes. You were booking their flights. You were booking their hotels. It looks like you enjoyed what was going on. And the prosecution wants to say she did not enjoy it. This was part of her job. And she was, forced to do it or coerced to do it. That's where they're coming from. And the defense obviously is going to say the same thing that I'm saying, that
Yeah.
I think that it makes her look like a co-defendant.
Well, also, if you're the defense, could you look at this and say he's Sean Combs, he's a business mogul? Of course, he's going to have like all these cell phones, frequent flyer accounts, and you can just dismiss the numbers as what it was business?
The key here, the many cell phones and things of that nature, it's going to depend on what's on those cell phones, right? So if he had 7 cell phones and it's all business discussions and things of that nature, it's not that big of a deal. If there were discussions with prostitutes and things like that, which I think that's where they're going with it, and they're going to say, oh, this one phone, even though it was in Sean Combs' name, it was Cassie's phone. This phone belonged to, his house manager. This phone belonged to someone else who, made the travel arrangements. That's most likely what they're going to do. And again, it all comes back to how are they going to prove that this is a sex trafficking, quote unquote, ring, as opposed to a John that, booked prostitutes and had assistants that booked prostitutes and had willing participants in the prostitution that were getting paid or some other reward for it. Like that first guy that took the stand, who
Yeah.
is a male prostitute, who says, hey, listen, I never got paid. This was I was doing it out of the goodness of my heart. I don't know what that brought to the case, aside from him saying that he witnessed some violence against Cassie. But he was essentially saying, Cassie paid me. Cassie booked this. Cassie looked like she was enjoying it. Cassie gave me directions on how to properly urinate on someone, which, that's weird to me. That,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it's been in oh, let's just go to Cassie's testimony because she's going to be cross-examined. The testimony that she gave when she was speaking, being questioned by prosecutors, incredibly compelling, very graphic. It's hard to describe. But if you're the defense and you're trying to say that this was part of her, she was part of this, how do you go about not kind of alienating jurors who may be seeing a pregnant woman on the stand giving this incredibly emotional testimony and get what you want out of someone who's a very key witness in this case?
Yeah, it's very difficult, and that's probably why they have women on their team, and they brought in a young lady from Atlanta. They have Temi Garagos, who I know did the opening statement. My guess is one of them are going to do the cross examination of Cassie. certain lawyers have certain attributes that are good for certain witnesses. I am a scorched earth, broadsword. I show no mercy. It's very difficult for me to pull back at a moment in time. I'm Mike Tyson in his prime. I'm not Mike Tyson fighting Jake Paul. So I don't pull punches. I don't kind of think about like, oh man, this one question is going to alienate the jury, which probably is my weakness, right? And that's why you want someone on your team that is beneficial and can cross someone without turning the jury off. And generally, that's a female on female job. If you looked at the Johnny Depp trial, the reason why that was so very successful was because of the way the lead attorney in that case did his Marauders lineup. And the Marauders lineup for that case was exactly the way that it should have gone. They had a female cross-examining a female, and that really was the key to that case. The winning combination was that. So I anticipate that the cross-examination is going to be either Temi or the from my guess. I don't see a male attorney being successful in cross-examining her and also not turning the jury off. Although, I look at this case, I would chomp at the bit to cross-examine Cassie. I would light her up like a Christmas tree. And it's not just because of what I've heard on the street, what I know from like listening and reading and things of that nature, but just the controversy and in the testimony between what she says now and how long she was there and why she was there. And I'm sure the prosecutor has already kind of gone over this with her and pre-tried their case, but it's very difficult to answer those questions, why you would stay with someone for 7 years. And I've said this before, the first time someone does something or urinates on you or asks you to do something weird, that's weird, right? The first time you're like, okay. The 50th time, there's something to that. There's something more there. And a psychiatrist or psychologist that's going to say, well, she was coerced because she was, mentally abused and all these things. I don't know if that works with this jury. Not the way that I've seen this jury come together in terms of a deli clerk and a massage therapist. I don't know if that argument's going to work.
For as emotional as it seemed, I mean, cameras aren't in the courtroom, of course, and we only know what we're being told about how things went in the courtroom yesterday. As far as her testimony, how big of a problem is that for the defense thus far? How did it go? If you were defending Sean Combs, how would you say from what you've heard the direct went?
So I always look at cases like basketball games, and I always say, you could be down 10 points and then all of a sudden go on a run of 20. It's so early in this case to really determine, where it's going. Her testimony alone, I think it was expected, right? We've known kind of her story forever. She filed a complaint. She did all these things, made statements. Her lawyer made statements. People made statements. It's not something that came out that was so unusual. I mean, the details, the certain, body fluids and things like that. Obviously, we didn't know everything. To me, it went as expected. I mean, you knew she was going to take the stand. You knew she was pregnant. You knew she was going to testify the way that she's testifying, that she's a victim and not a co-defendant. And it's really the job of the defense now is to, launch those nukes and say, hey, you were with the guy for 7 years. You enjoyed going on $100,000 shopping sprees. You enjoyed going to the red carpet. You did all these things. You called these people. You arranged these people. From what I know, just from hearing from around the rumors then and some of the testimony is that she was calling these people on her own. She was setting these things up on her own. Sometimes Sean Combs would be out of town and she was calling these people, asking for pictures of the guys and descriptions of the guys. And really the defense has to go the route that, you're sitting there today, not as a co-defendant, but as a victim, simply because you're cooperating with the government. But, she didn't complain the day she left in 2018. No one heard anything about all these things. She never said that she did these things unwillingly and it was disgusting. And Sean Combs is a gross guy. You heard about it after she was married for several years to a trainer that probably couldn't provide her the same type of lifestyle she was used to in living with Sean Combs, and then she sues him for $50 million. That's the defense. That's where they need to go with it. Is it, a two-edged sword? Could you turn the jury off? Sure. There's a way to do it that doesn't turn the jury off. It's probably not my way because, like I said, I'm like John Wick when I cross-examine somebody. I leave no body. There's nothing left when I cross-examine someone. So, I think it needs a lighter touch, but to prove the same points that I just discussed.
There's that video from the incident in the hotel that now has been seen by everybody. I'm sure many of the jurors have already seen it. We're aware of it because it was such a big news story when it came out. So we have some extended footage that's been released. But what role will that video? Sean Combs is not on trial for domestic violence. Like the defense has kind of pointed that out. But what role does this play? Is this a problem for the defense, that video being included?
Sure. The video is always a problem because it demonstrates that he's a violent guy. He's not a good guy. And whenever you have a case, it's always, although it should not be part of the case, it always is that the defendant's a bad guy. Nobody wants the jury, especially the government, to feel bad for a defendant. So when you have a defendant that goes to church every Sunday, takes care of his mom, takes care of his kids, has no other issues, no sexual issues, no crazy stuff in his background, the prosecution is usually left kind of floundering. And those are usually your white collar crime cases and things of that nature, but they find something, right? Oh, he was a good guy, but look, he spent money on Ferraris and Lambos. He went to $1,000 dinner. They do anything they can to dirty up a defendant. Now, in this case, it's not that hard to dirty up Sean Combs because, for all from everyone that's viewing this, he's not a good guy. And this is not like something that is a revelation that he's not a good guy. It's known by people. He had a show where he made people walk across the Brooklyn Bridge to get him a piece of cheesecake. Like, this is not someone that is going to church every Sunday and is a great dude. But the defense, that is the defense. Defense is, listen, he's not a good guy, but that's not a crime. The crime is not that he's not a good guy, that he's not a good person, that he hasn't made mistakes, that, he's gotten violent before. But, they're going to say Cassie was a violent woman as well, and that it was tit for tat, that she would smack him around, he would smack her around. And this was something that was their relationship was very toxic. And that angle is the only angle they can take, especially with that video, that I think the video is a horrible video. And if it was a domestic violence case, he'd be convicted tomorrow. The problem is it's not a domestic violence case. So the prosecution is going to say, well, the video shows that he's a horrible person. But besides that, it shows the control he had over her, that it wasn't just mental control, it was also physical control. And when people didn't do what he wanted them to do, he got violent. And that's going to be the problem with the video. And if the other witnesses take the stand and say the same thing, that video just, like I said, bolsters her testimony that she is a victim and not a co-defendant.
She's obviously, I think it's 8.5 months pregnant, so she could have a baby, really at any point. And she went early in this case this trial that could go weeks. I mean, with how good you feel if you were to cross-examine her, if you were the defense, would you have wanted her later in this trial or have her at the beginning?
That's a good question. I think for the defense, I think having her earlier, I mean, she's pregnant. It is what it is. You can't get around that. I mean, even if she gives birth, she's going to come in and say, I just gave birth to a baby. Like, doesn't really matter, right? Any way you cut it, it's not great. She's either a brand new mom with a newborn or she's pregnant and currently pregnant. And none of those facts are good. Whether or not to have her earlier or later, I think for the defense, having her earlier is better than having her later, because having her earlier, people tend to forget things. It moves on. You're 3-4 weeks down the road. Now you've seen the video in the first couple days of the trial. I think for the defense, it actually is beneficial having her earlier than leaving on that note. In 3 weeks, she's the last witness and what a bad dude he is. And you build up that suspense Oh, we're going to hear from Cassie. We're going to hear from Cassie. The jury's ready. They want to hear from Cassie. And then Cassie takes the stand and she delivers, right? That's what you don't want. So having her earlier, I think, is beneficial for the defense, in my point of view. For the government, I don't think it's a good move to have her earlier than later, because you don't get to see who's crossing, how they're going to cross individuals, the technique they're going to use. Are they coming in hard? Are they coming in soft? Those type of strategic things they don't get the benefit of. So her taking the stand early, I think, is beneficial for the defense, not as beneficial for the government.
One thing with financial records that stood out to me was that he had a frequent flyer account with Southwest Airlines, which, this is Sean Combs. He's supposed to be a billionaire. No disrespect to Southwest Airlines, but he's not really the person you would expect to see. I know they don't do assigned seating anymore, or the free seating, but like what is the point of including that? What could the prosecution be trying to argue by including these frequent flyer accounts? And does it stick out to you that he would have, it's not officially a budget carrier, but not something you would expect a media mogul to be flying on?
Yeah, so a couple things. One is I represent a lot of high net worth individuals. I mean, very high net worth that have frequent flyer accounts at United, Delta, Southwest. They have teams of people that they usually fly out, on different airlines. I think they're going to use it to prove that he flew prostitutes out to different areas and used frequent flyer miles, or used his account to fly out prostitutes, or to fly in, whatever, drug dealers, or whatever they're going to say he flew in. I think that's where they're going with those records. I don't think they're introducing them just to show, hey, this rich guy also had Southwest accounts. But it's not unusual to have high net worth individuals having Southwest accounts or Delta accounts, or my favorite, JetBlue. Any of those accounts.
Which he had as well, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, JetBlue. Well, who doesn't fly JetBlue Mint? It's unbelievable. But even if you're a billionaire. But long story short is, the reason for those, generally when you're representing high net worth individuals, I mean, I'll get flown out on JetBlue as opposed to, my client saying, hey, I'm going to fly a private jet down to Florida for you for my case in New York. They will usually say, hey, I'll book you a ticket on JetBlue or whatever. And that's generally how that happens, is that, support staff, legal staff, assistants, things that people are not going to be flying with the individual on their private jets. Those are usually used with the Southwest accounts and things of that nature. So it's not unusual. To me, it's not unusual. Again, it's one of those things that, the prosecution is going to use it to show something else, but it's not an unusual in itself fact.
Is it a challenge when you're presenting financial records to a jury? I mean, they just heard from Cassie, and it was incredibly emotional, raw testimony. And then if they start talking about frequent flyer miles and show spreadsheets with dollars and cents, that you could find some jurors getting bored. I mean, is that a challenge? Is that a concern for the government as you're trying to paint this picture of what they say happened?
So let me start with this. Every trial that you're going to have moments of sleepiness, right? The boring parts of the trial. That's just part of trials. There's always a boring part, even in robbery cases, bank robbery cases, any of that. There's always a part of the trial that's going to be sleepy, that's going to be boring. Some guy takes the stand and says, hey, listen, here's the documents, and here's what was stolen, and here's the accounting of what was stolen, things of that nature. That's always going to happen. In this case, the reason why they're bringing in the paperwork after Cassie, or during Cassie's testimony possibly, is to, like I said, bolster her testimony. Hey, I paid, Diamond or Jaguar or whatever the prostitute's name is. I paid him $2,500 in cash, and I took it out of my account. And they know that the defense would say, oh, you paid him on his own. That had nothing to do with Sean Combs. What the prosecution is going to show is that, before she paid him the $2,500, Sean Combs zelled her, 10 grand or whatever it is. And that testimony in itself is going to try and bolster her testimony that she is indeed a victim and not a co-defendant, that Sean Combs was giving her this money to pay for these prostitutes. Now, that in itself is illegal, by the way. So, like for Cassie, that could be bank fraud. That could be tax evasion. Did she declare the money she was getting from Sean Combs? All of those things that she avoided by becoming a victim as opposed to not cooperating with the government and probably becoming a co-defendant are things that the defense are probably going to expose.
And then just lastly for you, Bradford, I mean, what's the biggest challenge that the defense is going to face over the course of the next several weeks?
I think the biggest challenge is, the having a jury look at this, the facts of the case, and not get stuck in the quicksand of like, boy, this is weird. Like the weird sexual activities, the other things that are going on. I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle. We haven't heard a lot about these RICO charges, about, the murders for hire, all these other things that they made those accusations about. I'd like to see what comes of that. We haven't heard a lot about it. I don't know a lot about it. So I think that's going to be kind of interesting. But as of right now, I think the biggest hurdle is the conviction or possible conviction on the prostitution charge, which I think is the least of their worries because of the maximums that carries. I think if they knock out the sex trafficking and then, mitigate the RICO, I think that they're doing a phenomenal job if they can get that done. And I think it's a definite possibility to get that done based on what I've seen and what I've heard and what I've read.
All right, criminal defense attorney Bradford Cohen will continue to monitor the trial. Thanks for joining us on Law and Crime. It's always great to have you.
Thanks, Ben.
For On the Case, presented by Law and Crime, I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.